Hey everybody, Brendan here. Welcome back to another London system game. Looks like our London is going to be a little strange today. So, how should we do this? I'm thinking C3. C3 will make sure that we can get a London still. Great. Things are looking good. And bishop f4. So this is like an exchange Slav / London. We got to be a little careful here that we don't blunder anything with bishop b4 check. So is there anything to worry about? If I go knight b5, this looks very annoying and dangerous. But I have to wonder if bishop b4 check. Or if queen a5. Queen a5 is also annoying, so it looks like we have to play e3 here. All right. And I'm just going to focus on development for the time being. So let's just go bishop b5. And let's also castle. And rook c1. There we go. So we have like a normal-ish position. I kind of want to keep the bishops on. I don't think it particularly hurts. I think bringing it back to d3 makes sense. Because like they have a slight space disadvantage. So the way I want to play this is to try and take advantage of their space disadvantage. And now I think this move might hurt them. Does it? Check, takes, knight g5, king g6, and then I can go queen g4. But then they have f5, and I don't have queen g3, which is important. This is actually a very important tactical theme. So I could also go bishop to e5, where if they take, then I can take with the knight, and my knight's just a little bit more aggressive. I just really wish that this knight g5 move worked. I could go knight g5 immediately. Let's think about this. So takes... King takes. I'm just going to double check. King g6, queen g4, which is the important move. f5, which is also important. And if I had queen g3, then this would work because knight takes e6. Check would be a threat, but unfortunately their knight covers g3. So it looks like I'm not going to be able to do that. Instead, I'd rather play bishop to e5. And I'll take. So despite us not having the bishop pair, we do have a nice knight on e5 here. And we're going to try and make that worth something. How much will it be worth? I'm not quite so sure. But we do want to keep the pressure on. So I'm going to play a3. They're going to go back. And I think this move f4 is worth consideration. Kind of like a stonewall structure, where we're trying to go for some sort of kingside attack. I think this is the right way to play it. All right. So I like g4 and g5 here, actually. It's a bit surprising, but I don't really see anything wrong with it. I also like b4 first to try and take advantage of this pawn here. But I think g4 is a bit more aggressive and more potent here. So let's start with g4. If they go b4, we have to take it. But then we get g5. Yeah, so now we're getting g5, and they actually have to take here, don't they? Yeah, they do. But this doesn't look so good for them, does it? After I take with the f-pawn, where's their knight going? Yeah, that's not really a comfortable square, is it? So there's two ways I can play this. I can try taking immediately, which might work, or I can play queen h5 and try to provoke some weakness. So we have to calculate the checks. So taking with check, king takes, queen h5 check, king g8, rook f3, threatening rook h3. Do they have any defense there? So queen h5 and then rook f3 at the end of it. If they go f6, we always go g6, so that doesn't work. If they go g6, then we just go like queen h6 and we renew the threat. Yeah, I don't think they can stop it. If we just take on h7 here, it looks like this is going to be a winner. Check and rook f3. So this is what you have to sometimes be careful of whenever you play this type of way against the London. And why you should be afraid of giving up the bishop pair sometimes, because sometimes you just get positions like this. We do have to be a little bit careful, because now I'm noticing that there is actually knight g7 to h5. However, I don't really think it gives them enough here. So we can actually, I think, take on h5. Or we can just go knight e2 to f4. I think both of these kind of finishes the game. I wonder if there's a way to be more accurate, if there's one way that's better. One thing to mention is they can go like rook c8 or whatever, but it doesn't really solve their problems. Okay, I like taking en passant, but I also like taking. So how should I do this? If I take en passant like this looks quite good, but then they go rook f7. We can still take on g6, but I like taking on g6 immediately where knight h7 is played, and then we go like knight f4. And we have this huge grip on the position, despite being down a piece. It just really does not matter here. We can go like rook h7, and then knight h5 as well. And I think we just build up enough and win the piece. Let's just win our piece back. I think that's probably the safest bet. So let's take. I think this does just win back the piece. And there's a really important reason why. So if they try holding on to it, I just don't think this works after king h1. Because we're going to take on h5 anyways. And then they're going to be met with moves like rook g1. And I think that they just run into too many problems. So now we can just take this guy. We have to remove the defender of the g7 square. And yeah, this looks like checkmate. So yeah, cool game. This might have been a mistake, so we're going to have to look into it. But I think that was still a fun one and something we should be proud of. So even though the London is supposed to be some sort of like boring opening, we keep getting these very aggressive games. I'm really liking the way things are turning out. I'm not much of a d4 player or even a c4 player, so these are new ideas and positions to me. So I'm just trying to stick to my strengths of being an e4 player and trying to mix some attacking ideas into the d4 opening. Yeah, we get this normal exchange Slav. And yeah, we don't really have too much to worry about here. And yeah, it feels like they already kind of misplayed things. They probably should have brought their queen out earlier. But yeah, so I wanted to keep this bishop on the board because it just has nice attacking prospects. And we're just trying to look at what is on the board and what would happen if we were to take. So if we were to take, I don't like this as much. Mainly because after bishop takes on c6, we're relieving pressure in a position where we don't really need to. And just going back a few moves, the big imbalance of the position is we have a bishop on f4, whereas they have a bishop on d7. If we take on c6, we could be activating their bishop a bit more. Whereas if we just retreat, just hold our pieces as they are, then the real big imbalance here is just these two. Which one's better? And it's very clear, especially in middle games, that this bishop's going to be better than the one on d7. If you go into endgame, sometimes that can be different. I think there's this game, Capablanca Janowski, I think it was like 1928. I could be wrong on the date there. But that's a very famous game and a good example of exactly what can go wrong if white isn't careful about this bishop on d7. This can actually turn out to be a good piece, so you got to watch out for that. So bishop to d3, and again, bishop to e5 I thought was totally fine. Bishop g5 was better though, unfortunately. So one thing I was calculating was this move, so it doesn't actually work. And the reason why is because after king g6 and then queen to g4, they have this move f5. This is very important. If they do not have this move f5, then they run into the problem that after queen g3, there's knight e6 threats. Like, there's a ton of discovery threats. But unfortunately, we don't have a pawn on e5, so they always have moves like king f6 in reserve as well. But yeah, again, this f5 move is really annoying because they cover the g3 square. So always be aware of those types of things whenever you're looking at those positions in depth and trying to figure out if these bishop takes h7 moves work. So bishop e5 wasn't the best. But I think we actually got a totally fine position. They really should not have taken. I was kind of also happy just to see f6 and bishop to g3 because, well, we do have this light square bishop and they started weakening some light squares. So that was kind of my idea here. But it turns out f5 is actually quite reasonable. So knight takes e5, and yeah, I think we have nothing really to be ashamed of here. a3, bishop d6, and yeah, and I thought this move f4 would be extremely interesting. So one thing to look at here is after g4, b4, we can't just retreat the knight or something. We have to be careful that we don't hang anything. But yeah, I think we're totally fine with these moves like g5 coming. So yeah, g5, and things are extremely good for us now. Actually, here, if knight e8, then knight takes d7 is playable. So that's a huge problem for them. But let's see if we did anything incorrectly here. So f takes is kind of forced. Knight e4 I wasn't really scared of. I thought this was probably their best bet though, where I was just going to take the pawn, and we're up a pawn, and it's actually hard to take advantage of our king side despite a lot of the pawns being pushed. This might not be the most principled way to play, but it is something that does show a clear advantage, and a winning one at that. So knight e8, bishop takes h7 does work, which is good to know. So rook h3, or rook f3 is good. Rook f4 is also good. And what I missed here after knight g7, rook h3, and knight h5 is I was looking at knight e2, and I was also looking at rook takes h5, because this can sometimes just win the game, and it actually does here. So I'm sad I missed it, because after g6, takes, king h8, we actually have this move king h1, and the problem is they don't have any way to take over this g file, and we have a simple threat of just rook g1 and queen h6, which just forces mate. But I'm not really too sad about the way we played it with knight e2, because as long as we do something about this knight at some point, then we just win. So f5 was an interesting try, but we can just take it. I was also looking at rook takes immediately, or even queen takes g6, knight g7, and I thought that this is very promising. Rook f7, and actually queen h6 is really strong. This is something I missed. I was looking at knight f4 here, followed by knight h5. But this doesn't look so bad either. I didn't know if there was any sort of play here after knight h5, but turns out king f8, or even, I was wondering if bishop e8, but queen h6 again is a huge problem and wins the game. Yeah, so yeah, again, at this point, we are just completely winning. Rook takes h5. I don't know why I didn't play this, because there is a mate threat immediately, but it doesn't really matter, because even in this position, we're still pretty much forcing some sort of mate with rook takes and rook g1. So king f7 and sacrifice the exchange and win. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty nice game. Definitely some things we could work on, mainly in the opening stage here, of making sure we're a little bit more aware of the c5, and also maybe bishop e5 wasn't necessary. I think that's the one thing that I would probably change next time around. I would rather play bishop g5 and go into this position, because if they want to get that bishop, they have to make a ton of weaknesses. Actually, it doesn't even work here, because we can just take and threaten mate, so we actually save our bishop and win at least a pawn, probably two out of it. So that's actually pretty good. Yeah. All right, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.